crosses of the sun. With gentle touch, it means so much to bring our faith into this reality. We set each other free.
Oh, welcome everybody to a special edition of the Eagles Nest podcast. We are filming live. I'm up here at Cosmic Tree of Life in the beautiful upper state of Wisconsin. I got a beautiful view out at the lake. Here, I'll take the camera out and show you right quick. So this is Lake, let me see, Arvida, Lake Arvida. Yeah, it's pretty awesome. Got my mother-in-law coming up so she can take care of Hawk for the retreat starts tomorrow officially. People start showing up today, I believe, and tomorrow, and we're to be doing ceremony tomorrow night and Sunday night. So yeah, it's just been a beautiful week of preparing the medicine, preparing the space. This is the first time a retreat's going to be held up here at Cosmic Tree of Life, so excited for that. Just a beautiful environment to get acquainted with the land and everything right here. But yeah, I wanted to do a special edition. I got a buddy, Hamilton Souther, that I've been trying to get in contact with for I think about 2 years now, and just putting out in the universe, and finally the universe said it's time for us to meet. So yeah, I'm about to bring him on in just a second, but yeah, I just want to give a shout out to Cosmic Tree of Life and yeah, everybody that's going to be showing up for the retreat this weekend. Yeah, we're ready for you. Got really good medicine, and been working on it all week, and yeah, finally got it dialed in, and really excited about this guest and this conversation. So without further ado, I'm gonna bring him on in. My brother Hamilton, welcome to the Eagles Nest podcast, man. How are you? Hold on.
Well, here I am. Hey, guys.
There you go.
It's good, Drew. Thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here, brother. It's an incredible opportunity to speak to everybody, and just awesome.
Yeah. So if those you don't know, Hamilton's down in Peru. That's why we're kind of doing the special time and everything. He's getting his retreat center set down there to start accepting guests, I think in October, if I'm not mistaken. And yeah, he's just if you don't know Hamilton Souther, gotta look him up. He's been on tons of podcasts, including Aubrey Marcus several times. He is the founder and chairman of Blue Morpho, a retreat center down in Peru, and he's just another particle source going through this journey, and I'm so excited about this conversation, man. So what is going on in your day today? Like, what is your daily life like?
Oh, dude, it was an amazing day. I woke up around 5 a.m. and just had the intention, a spirit inside me that's just like, dude, you got to keep writing your book. So I'm writing a book on the second half of my apprenticeship down in the Amazon from 2002 to 2005. So I wrote the first book last year or 2 years ago. It's on Amazon. It's called Medicine versus Sorcery. And it's about the real Amazonian practices. It's about indigenous practice and tribal practices that have been going on for thousands of years. And I was one of the first, foreigners to be allowed into blood lineage and taught in the same traditions as they teach their own children and grandchildren. And so, yeah, I was writing that book this morning and actually finished the final chapter of it. So, just dropped to the end, and we're getting it to the editors. And then, yeah, just working on Blue Morpho and our reopening. We were running solid for 19 years. We were one of the first dedicated healing centers to real Amazonian plant medicine practices, including ayahuasca, as well as other visionary plants, plant dietas, really the core of the traditional practices. And we opened that up to people from around the world in 2002. And we were one of the, thought leaders and first forward-facing faces in the space. We got a lot of publications and stuff about what we were doing. And then, we ran strong for 19 years, and then COVID shut us down. So we had to take a short hiatus, but we didn't go away. We just regrouped and tried to improve every aspect of what we're doing. And now we're implementing all of that, looking forward to this October reopening.
That's amazing, man. You're just your story, like I told you in our chats, getting prepared for this interview. Your story really helped me expand and like go into my message, I received in 2016, and know that, okay, these messages do come to white guys, they do, the medicine doesn't care about race and skin color and all that stuff. It is possible, and it allowed me to really dissect who I am and really find who I am. And in turn, man, your presence and you sharing your story has helped hundreds of people through me. So the tidal wave keeps going on and on and on. And I just want to recognize you for that, And so people that may not know Hamilton Souther, I'm sure if they're tuning in, they know something about you. But for those, maybe one or two out there that don't know, can you fill us in, like what happened? Around 18, I know you was doing meditation and everything, and you were seeking before you went down the Amazon. But what was life like before you really went down the Amazon and really got opened up into the other reality?
Yeah, life, through the university was adventurous for sure, but still really held inside the box. So I traveled around the world, which I thought was interesting. I studied anthropology, which, was really about the study of people. And I was really interested in both, ancestral anthropology and then also cultural anthropology. So I had this, very long historical context to what I was looking at, but then also living cultures. And, I noticed through those studies that most of the living cultures had some kind of plant medicine use or some kind of psychedelic plant medicine, visionary plant medicine use. And, so I thought that was fascinating, but it didn't really have during that time a key role in my life. And then the year that I graduated from the university, I had a spontaneous spiritual awakening. It just happened. It just went from there was no spirit in my life to spirit is everywhere. And I could see spirit and spirit communicated with me and I could communicate with spirit. And, it was just real. And so that is actually, what took me first into shamanism. I turned to shamanism as a way to try to understand the experiences I was having. And I had enough knowledge from studying it as an outsider to know that there was something really aligned between what people had written about and what I was experiencing. And so that got me to look to shamanism. And then when I looked at it, there were practices that just made sense to me. It was like I was remembering something instead of like learning something for the first time. And so I quickly learned how to go into trance. I quickly learned how to, communicate with spirits. And then I was literally told I was going to go to Peru. This was in 2001. I was told I was going to go to Peru and that I would find an apprenticeship. I didn't know in what kind of shamanism. I was just told, go to Peru and in 90 days, you'll find your apprenticeship. And so I went, I didn't see that any way out of it. So I went to Peru to look for the apprenticeship and I ended up finding it between day 70 and 80 on my journey. And I was out in the middle of the Amazon in this, pretty much kind of like the last inhabitants of a big part of forest before it just became uninhabited forest. And it turned out that a real elder, an 85, 86-year-old elder lived there in that community. And so I was guided to him. He ended up becoming the shaman that accepted me into the lineages. And it all started from there.
That's amazing. I think I remember from your story, your first teacher that you found ended up not being a good fit for you, and you actually found another teacher after that. Is that correct?
Yeah. In my first ceremony, I was shown the location I would apprentice in, but not who my teacher would be. So it's an interesting nuance to the ceremony itself. So I was on this journey looking for a teacher, and this was not something that was really common practice happening at that time. There was a little bit of mystical tourism or shamanic tourism going on. It was like an addition to somebody's experience. It's sort of like, hey, if you want to try this, you can, and people would allow it and stuff. But no one was teaching foreigners, and no one was, going in depth with them really into hardcore apprenticeships that, at least Republic or anybody knew about. So, I was looking for a real teacher. I was looking for a real apprenticeship. And so in that first ayahuasca ceremony, I saw in the visions that literally where I was, the physical location was where I was going to apprentice, but there was no teacher. And so that part hadn't been defined yet. And so that first person I worked with actually was really quite a malevolent individual. He ended up practicing dark arts. I knew nothing about that, obviously, when I first got involved. And so he would heal, and he was also a gun for hire. And so he got jealous of me, and he started to test me. Yeah, no, he did. He got jealous, and he started to test me. And his test was simply if I could survive him trying to kill me. And so he was public about it. I didn't make this up. He spoke about it in the local communities. He would get drunk and, just say that he was going to do that and that was my test. And so, he hurt me really bad. And through that experience of looking for healing, I ended up finding Julio and Alberto, who became the two shamans that trained me during that time. And so I went to them for healing. And then Julio and I, who was the great elder, developed a serious, incredible bond. And through that friendship, I was accepted.
I bring that up because I know that you probably don't care about talking about it or not or anything, but whether you talk about it or not, but I wanted to bring it up for the people so that are just finding out about ayahuasca, just to understand that there's people out there that use this medicine not in a good way. They use it for their own purposes and their own, they're working through their own darkness in their own soul and whatever. But it's important to point that out. There's everyone that serves this medicine is not always in the right vibration and everything. So it's a good point to point out. Ultimately, you have to know your truth and feel it, within. That brings up a point like, I heard you on Aubrey a few times and different podcasts that you're on. When I was getting to know you, like when I was getting to feel you, like your message and everything, I'm sure you experienced this, but like some of the things you said, it's like, man, the universe is talking through this dude, and like I'm gonna have to talk to dude one day. It's like, the things. It's like, it's almost like you could see like into what I was doing, and it's not so much you seeing into what I was doing, but it's our vibrations were so close together on certain things that's why this conversation just had to happen eventually, man. This is amazing, man. This is probably one of I've had Kevin Day on. He was involved in the USS Princeton and Nimitz incident, and I've had Billy Carson on, and they're all great guys, man. But this is probably the one interview I've looked forward to the most out of any of them, man. Like I talk about source and UFOs and all that, but talking about ayahuasca with Hamilton, like it's amazing, man. So so tell us about, can you share anything about like your cooking process, like if it's anything crossing the line or anything, but like your harvesting process, your cooking process, and what goes in to the Blue Morpho brand?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff out there. We shared the way we cooked openly with all of our guests for the last 19 years. So we actually tried to show that this was not just mystical practices that had to be hidden behind a veil, but this was serious medicine practices that needed to be shared. So when we harvest, first of all, we cultivate our own ayahuasca. And so, we grow it from the cutting. We grow it anywhere from 5 to 10 years before we harvest it. And by between 4 and 5 years, it's mature enough to be harvestable and used as medicine. And, when you harvest, you try to harvest branches. You don't try to cut the mother trunk down so that it'll keep growing and send up more branches. And you also take some of the cuttings and plant to the nearby trees around it so that you can keep your grove of ayahuasca growing more. And it just grows from the cutting. So if you take a 12-inch cutting and put half of it underground, it'll start to grow into another vine. And that could be from a very small cutting that you might not use in the ayahuasca to a slightly thicker vine, like the size of your thumb. We live and work in alignment with the spirit. So we don't have a lot of ritual around that. So, we'll bless the plant with tobacco smoke and just thank it and ask it to be great medicine for what we're creating and then harvest it. But we feel like we have a pact with the medicine that we're all in agreement to be doing what we're doing. And so that's pretty simple process. We just use machetes, and like I say, we harvest it in the most sustainable way. And then same thing with chacruna. We grow chacruna from the leaf and from the seeds and also from cuttings. And so we harvest the chacruna beforehand. And same thing, we ask for permission and blessing, and then then we just harvest it. And then you're always harvesting the plant in a way that's sustainable, so you're not damaging the plant, so that it can grow back. The leaves will grow back anywhere between 6 weeks and 3 months. So we try to harvest the most mature leaves, and that's really it. And then on the cook day, we go through a process of educating people on how we prepare ayahuasca, and we lay it all out. So we show how we pound the ayahuasca, how we break it down so that the water can get into it, and we can extract all the important, what we call vitamins from the ayahuasca. All the important vitamins can get into the tea, and then and then we have a variety of different admixtures we add to it. So we, in the Amazon, you're known for your practice based on the kind of plants that you work with. So if you work with ayahuasca, you're an ayahuasquero. If you work with mapache tobacco, you're a mapachero. If you work with the trees and you do tree dieta, you're a palero. So we trained in 5 disciplines. So we were ayahuasqueros, paleros, mapacheros, sanangueros, and toeros that work with toe. And so we would add those disciplines into our ayahuasca. So we use lots of different admixtures. We use barks from different trees that we do in dieta. So like Lupuna Blanca or Capirona, Remo Caspi, Chia Chucky Caspi, Anacaspi. There's about 20 to 30 different trees that we'll use anywhere from 5 to 10 different kinds of barks as well. You don't use very much. You just use a couple of sections about, maybe 3-4 inches wide by an inch or 2 tall. It all needs to go into the ayahuasca itself. And then often the shamans will add a little bit of mapache tobacco to the ayahuasca as well. It's a very small amount, maybe, the amount of the equivalent of like one kind of small cigar would go into each pot of ayahuasca. And that's really it. So you layer the plants into the pot. It's a little different because we're using fresh plants, and we're usually making large batches of ayahuasca at the same time. So the amount of plants that go in there is a little bit different than if you acquire the plants yourself. So we're just using larger amounts. But for a liter of ayahuasca, we're probably using somewhere between 6 to 10 kilos of ayahuasca and another, 10 to 15 kilos of chacruna per pot. And so it's a little bit more in weight, maybe like, 2 to 1 in weight to chacruna to ayahuasca. And we just find that gives a good blend. And then from there, you can dose appropriately for each person with the amount of, the amount that you give. Over the years, I've been, advancing in our practices so that we're moving slightly beyond just the tradition from just this is our one ayahuasca and this is the way we always make it, to now creating a variety of ayahuasca that we share. Some of them, for some people, they just have slower metabolism. And so it's designed to work better with slower metabolism compared to faster metabolism. Some people are very sensitive to certain chemicals in the ayahuasca. So we make batches that have, slightly less concentration of vine to chacruna, et cetera, so that we can be a little more sophisticated in the way that we serve different people, so that you can have, just a little bit more direction over the experience they're going to have. You'll see in ayahuasca circles that for some reason, some people get in and in 30 minutes, they're fully in, and in 2 hours, they're out. And then other people are sitting there for the first 5 hours with nothing happening. And, at 5 hours and 1 minute, it's just on exponential for like the next 12 hours. So, by that time, all the sitters are tired, right? They're like, wait, they thought we were getting into like a 5-6 hour thing. It's now turned into like an 18-hour thing. So just to gauge those differences, which can be, such polarities, we have different kinds of ayahuasca and stuff we now use.
There's so many variables, man. There's just like every variable with the medicine, and variables with the people, like what they've been through, what they're trying to get out. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, and then with the people too, that has a lot to do with it. Because if you have physical illnesses you're dealing with, those can be so rooted energetically in the body that it takes days to get that energy moving. And then there are psychosomatic illnesses that you remove it out of the psyche and the body remanifests almost instantly. So there's just such a different variety of states that are being treated at the same time. that it's nice to have, you know, a slight variety in the tools that are available. And dieta is also, you know, an incredibly important part of that.
So can you expand a little for the people on how exactly ayahuasca heals physically?
Yeah, there's a number of different uses for it. It's really commonly used for gastrointestinal issues. You know, it's also really good for different kinds of pains and phantom pains and arthritic pains in the body. There's, you know, psychomagical healing that goes beyond really the explainable. And the reason why I say it goes beyond the explainable is because not everybody gets healed. So you will have people that just, you know, have cancer healing and the cancer just disappears. But then you'll also have other people that doesn't happen for, you know. And so it's when you start to get into the miraculous, it's hard to pin it down. But the miraculous forms of healing does happen in ceremony. But mostly you're using it to, you know, treat like gastrointestinal issues, or you're using it to treat kind of joint pain, and you can work on certain things associated with the spine and spinal pain and stuff like that as well. It's all pretty common uses.
But you would say like the stomach area and stuff where we hold like residue from past traumas. Is that correct? Like that's where we store them. That's why we have gastrointestinal issues.
Yeah, I mean through the whole body. It's not just from trauma, but yeah, I mean,
yeah.
You know, there's all different kinds of healing that takes place. The ayahuasca basically scans your body. It's hard to understand until you've met plant consciousness, and you can understand that the ayahuasca is unbelievably intelligent. So, you know, I'm not sure how intelligent it is in the bottle. This has always been a big question. When it's just sitting there as a tea, it's hard to tell, is that tea intelligent? But the moment you drink the tea and you align it and you unite it with your own intelligence, it takes on its own intelligence in its own right. There's something going on, and there's now tens of thousands of reports of people who said, oh yeah, the ayahuasca was conscious. The ayahuasca was talking with me. The ayahuasca was teaching me. The ayahuasca was guiding me. The ayahuasca came and told me how it would heal me, and then it healed me. So there's this intelligence, and now it's inside you, you know, which is just phenomenal, because you don't see that from Western drugs, you know, pharmaceutical drugs, et cetera. They're kind of, you know, they go in, they have a time that they're active, but it's not like they're intelligently working on you. This is incredibly intelligent. So it scans your body and it seeks where there is illness. And then it starts to work on that illness. And it can't heal every kind of illness, but it tries to heal as much of all illness as it possibly can. And it does so through a combination of effects. One is a purgative effect, where people literally feel energies in their body get they take on a shape and form different to how they normally feel. They're just not a pain, you know, like they actually see it. Some people relate it to, like, you know, smoke or colors or density in the body. And then some people see actual objects, and some people see entities. They actually see, you know, relatable to them shapes. They could be very small, like little totems. They could be little monsters. They can be like full-fledged demonic entity kind of things. And then they'll see these other kinds of beings interact with them and remove those. And they literally come out of the body in the visions. Like, there was something in my body, now there isn't something in my body. You know, and so like a good example of that, we had a person a number of years ago who came down who was clinically depressed since he was a young child. And he literally felt being that he described as an angelic being use a laser to cut off the top of his head. They removed his crown, showed him his crown, showed him where the incision in his skull was, went into his brain. He could only feel it, felt like a dark object removed from his brain. They showed it to him. They said, this was the source of your depression. They removed it. They brought this like multicolored gemstone in its place. They're like, we're going to put this in the place of where that dark stone was. They put it in his brain. They put the skull cap back on. They created a kind of suture and sealed it up. And they said, your depression's now healed. And lo and behold, his depression was healed. The next day, he had literally no symptoms of depression. That lasted from then until now. The depression never came back. And, you know, that was a psychomagical healing that took place in one of the ceremonies. It's more common, though, that somebody feels the energies drawn into their intestines, into their stomach, or, you know, into their actual small and large intestine. Either they vomit it out or they defecate and it comes out, and, you know, through that form. So people actually see objects coming out of their body. They'll see energies coming out of their body. Sometimes, like I say, it's amorphic, and sometimes it has a real shape and form. So that's also a pretty common way. And, you know, like I say, if the ayahuasca has the ability to remove the illness from you, it will.
Yeah, I think free will, our own free will, is one of those laws that dictate that. You know, we have to step forward to ask for it. Like, you know, people ask me all the time, like, what would we? Can we just go kidnap all the politicians and feed them ayahuasca? I was like, it wouldn't work. It wouldn't work. Like, because you have to step forward and actually ask for it. Like, they probably wouldn't even have an experience. But there's a common misconception that unless you step into these realms or step into these ceremonies, you know, that's a common misconception about these medicines, like that they're just work, like, and that's the understanding of the physical side without the understanding of the spiritual or energetic side of the medicine, I feel.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Have you ever heard of Uwhippy ceremony?
No, I haven't.
So Uwhippy ceremony is a North American Native American ceremony that involves no physical medicine. It just involves 28 songs sung at the stop of one, the other one begins, and it's basically a Native American seance. So this is where you know, people has had miraculous healings. I met Bigfoot in this ceremony for the first time. Like, I met small people in this ceremony for the first time. But yeah, it's just real interesting. I was wondering if there's any traditions down there or ceremonies that you know of down south that are similar to that, like a South American seance without medicine.
There are actually a lot of ceremonies that take place without, you know, psychoactive plants. There are basically trance-based ceremonies. There are fire ceremonies that people do. There's different kinds of dances that are also done. There's different kind of prayer circles. There's also, you know, very long meditative ceremonies. And especially in the Andes, there are these stone meditators, and they get together and they connect through different sacred sites and different sacred stones, and like large stones. These are like monolithic stones or natural stones coming out of the mountain, and they go to them and they touch them, and they're considered to be portals to other, you know, dimensions and locations, and different kinds of beings come through them. And, you know, so sort of that the veil of reality kind of, you know, becomes pulled apart and thinner, and there's a way to exchange energies through these, you know, different dimensional states, and they take place literally all over.
It's amazing. I like to see the similarities in different tribes and different areas, how things hold like the same vibration of traditions or ceremonies or ways. They're just spread out all over the world. They just go by different, you know, tons of different names, and I always like to see that. So what can you share, like what was your most transformational ceremony? Like, what was, and can you describe it in detail?
I mean, there's been a few. I think there's like always a top 10 list, you know, when you're just going to look back on it and think about it and go, wow. But honestly, I think my first ayahuasca ceremony was probably the most transformational, because that was the ceremony when I went from never having had the experience to having had it. And there was no coming back from that. So my first psychedelic experience was also transformational, but it didn't have the same context associated with that first ayahuasca. So really, that first ayahuasca ceremony was the one that transformed my entire life from before apprenticeship to apprenticeship. In that ceremony, yeah, I cooked ayahuasca during the day with the shaman that I worked with. So it was really amazing to go into the forest and collect ayahuasca and, you know, cook it in the forest itself. So we spent all day cooking it. And then we started the ceremony. I don't know, I forgot what time it was, but when the moon rose. He liked to drink when the moon rose. So when you could first see the moon in the sky. So at that moment, we started the ceremony. And he poured me a cup of ayahuasca, probably about 4.5 ounces, maybe a little more. I didn't know at that time that I was receiving an unbelievably strong dose of ayahuasca, and it also had a lot of Toei in it, which is similar to Datura, much more than what was needed, maybe even dangerous levels. And so I started the ceremony with a bunch of kind of irrelevant thoughts, like I wasn't sure if I'd been given enough. Having never drunk it before, it's kind of crazy to even have a measurement system in your head for something you know nothing about. But I kind of had that kind of thinking going on. And then it just felt so good, and it just felt so right when it went in. I didn't understand how it was a purgative. I mean, I didn't mind the flavor. I didn't think it was anyway, it felt right. That's all I can say. Like, it went in, and I was sitting in the jungle, and about 50 meters away from me was the river, and then across the river another 50 meters. So there was this open expanse that I could see. I could see a whole side of the forest from, the roots all the way to the tops of the trees. I felt safe where I was. And then at about 15 minutes, when it started to kick in, it was, clear that not only was I going to throw up, but I had been given way more than I needed. And the onset was so violent, and it was so fast. All those good thoughts went away immediately to something that was just overwhelming. I mean, like getting bowled over by an 18-wheeler, was the experience of it. And then the first thing I remember seeing was that everything became pixelated around me. It was a multi-D form of pixelization that all became sacred geometry. The sacred geometry started to beat with the shakapa of the shaman, and the shakapa sounds like a shuk. So to the shuk, 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 the whole space started to vibrate and pulsate. I looked around and saw it. It was in, through, and all around me. I remember thinking, oh, I'm definitely going to be throwing up. And then that started. And that didn't stop for probably about 4 hours. So I just went into deep cleansing. And during that time, I had all sorts of visions. I was cleansing my whole life. My life was being pulled apart, like second by second by second by second. And every experience I had second by second was being pulled apart. And anything in it that represented trauma, difficulty, misunderstanding was being unveiled, shown to me, taught to me at the same time, healed at the same time, purged at the same time. And so that was kind of okay for maybe about 5 minutes. And then the next, almost 4 hours, it just was beyond okay. It was so intense. A lot of that has to do, though, I now understand that from the Toei. The Toei was just so much stronger. It's like exponentially stronger than just the ayahuasca. So I had that, and then, and then this vortex opened up over me. And I had this clear understanding if I got sucked into the vortex, I was going to go completely insane. And it just was ripping apart my psyche, like the forces of it. It was it wasn't a calm vortex. It was this unbelievably intense, multidimensional vortex. And so I started to get sucked into it. And then while that happened, my psyche came apart, and I felt like I was going completely insane. But what that caused was this understanding of what needed to be purged. And so then it was like, go through visions, purge, go through visions, purge, go through visions, purge. And every time I was just doing a little bit better, a little bit better, a little bit better, but I was getting more tired. And I was literally digging into the ground. I was now covered in mud. I was, it was just completely intense. That turned into this final purge where I actually felt like hands collapsing my stomach. Felt like there were these hands walking up my esophagus, all the way up and then out my mouth. And what came out was an object about the size of a lemon. And it was gelatinous in its size. It glowed neon green. And when it came out of me, everything that represents trauma, suffering from my life, everything that was mental, fragmentation or difficulty was gone. Every kind of negativity was gone. I felt completely cleansed, completely purged, completely healed. And I was shocked at what had happened. I had no frame of reference for it. During that time, there was a bush that had turned into a wild boar that spoke an unending stream of obscenities at me. It was very critical for this bush. It was from this cocona plant. I remember this cocona plant had turned into a boar. There were 30-foot wingspan hummingbirds in the trees. They were watching over me. There were these angelic beings in the sky. I didn't really know how to relate to them because I was doubled over puking, and kind of all that was going on simultaneously. That big thing came out of me, and then it was like the heavens opened, like the heavens parted, and instead of me going into heaven, it was like heaven came down to us. And what was in it was just everybody from my life. Everybody. There were hundreds of thousands of people there, just from random acquaintances all the way to my parents. And they were all congratulatory, and they were all super supportive. And the final vision of the night was that I had found my apprenticeship.
Wow,
That was
that's
my first
crazy.
go. Yeah.
My first ceremony, I shit 15 times and had no visions, and I thought ayahuasca was a scam. And second night I died and saw the light and saw a couple thousand different lifetimes I had. So, well, at the time it was lifetimes. So what took you back down to Peru? Like what was the calling that said I need to leave Colorado and go back to Peru?
Oh, it was time to go. There was ultimately needs in our organization. I wanted to take over Blue Morpho again. I had left it to the management of others for a period of time while I was in the States doing the work that I was doing there. A lot of people don't know, but we've been on a developmental mission the whole time. Blue Morpho wasn't the only project we were working on, and we were always looking to see how we could expand the medicine and share the medicine in other forms and ways. So, I had been given really clear directions in 2012, 13, 14 to go back to the States and start developing other skills. And so I was going through the nature of that process. By 2018, I was told, okay, take those skills with you back down to the Amazon. You've amassed the skills that you needed up here. You guys are ready to continue on your mission. So I went back down to the Amazon to take over the management of Blue Morpho again, and really to launch our other projects through Blue Morpho, which had always been the center of our creation and the place that we showed medicine. And so, our goal was to try to answer the question, how can we positively impact society through the understandings and visions and awakenings from medicine that can reach more people? Because at least in the case of Amazonian medicine, there's just so many limitations around its practice, from geographic location to sourcing the plants to the legalities around it. And then, all the different restrictions of people who are on other kind of medications who can't participate in ayahuasca, like if you're on different kinds of antidepressants and MAOIs, or if you have heart problems or blood pressure problems, et cetera, other mental health problems that make you no longer a candidate. So I was looking to other traditions, for traditions that didn't have those same limitations. We were looking at all different kinds of ceremonies and rituals that we could do that didn't include ayahuasca, or that we could use other sacred visionary plants for. I got involved in cannabis shamanism. I created a discipline around the use of cannabis as a medicine, both for pain relief, but also as like a clear portal for shamanistic practices and spiritual practices. I developed an entire practice around that, and I started to share that. And then we got into the idea of the creator economy, and how creators in the world were being pushed aside, and they weren't being, ultimately given the tools that they needed to be able to further their creation, and also the monetization of their creation, which is really important. How can an artist actually live as an artist and transcend the idea of a starving artist? And in the medicine practices, we considered ourselves artists and creators. And so we wanted to help artists actually live a better life, because what they create is so important to the way consciousness evolves and the way the idea of medicine gets practiced. And so we wanted to, help artists from all over the world. So we got involved in technology projects. We put together a group of, enthusiasts from Blue Morpho who are also involved in the technology industry. And, we got together to build out a think tank to try to solve those problems. And so we got involved in Web3, NFTs, crypto, like all next gen technology that could be a means and a way to further express our medicine.
That's amazing. That's the next step. The ceremony is one thing, but we integrate that, and how do we integrate this new world into, on the big scale? We can do it personally, but how are we going to integrate it in the big world, business world, all that stuff? I put out a prayer maybe about 2 years ago or so. I want to stop being such a healing center more, and I want to be more of an optimization center. So my personal church, Sacred Dreams Within, back in Colorado, that's more of an optimization center. So we're starting, just from that prayer, we're starting to get more clientele that are business owners or leaders in their fields. And I'm trying to really affect it like that, trying to interject this consciousness at the top of businesses so that trickle down throughout their employees and whatnot.
Yeah, I think that's really important. We felt the same thing like around 2014 to 16. There had to be a movement if this was going to, reach a kind of mass adoption that could be a helpful tipping point for society, and really the expansion of consciousness and ending the war on consciousness, that there was have to be a way for people to adopt this into their daily life. And part of that was integration. Part of that was, okay, have the experience, but now do something with it, integrate it, and have it improve your life so that you can actually go create something new, whether it's business or a better family or different kinds of art, whatever that innovation would entail. And so, we're in total alignment with that vision. And I'm actually seeing lots of other circles look in that same direction, that, the optimization direction, the life improvement direction is a really important part of the medicine space now.
Yeah, it hit me. We were in ceremony one time, and I just asked ayahuasca. I was like, why are we getting these people with such heavy ailments? Like it seems like one right after another. Like it's because you're a healing center. It's like if you change to optimization center, then you're going to be optimizing people. It's just the law of attraction, or whatever you want to call it, the law of frequency and vibration is going to tell you that's what you're going to attract if that's what you're opening your doors for. But this I can sit there and help people clean out their closets all day long, but like I would rather help them rebuild their house, and instead of cleaning out an old house, I want to rebuild houses and make new spiritual buildings and all that stuff. So that's my focus, and everything up here is really moving forward. I think it's time. What do you think's going on now? Do you think this is the Renaissance? Do you think this is the awakening, the Great Awakening, or do you think this is just another point in time, like, and people are viewing it as something much larger than what it really is?
No, I think this is the Great Awakening. I just think that people aren't in agreement about what that means. So there's just so many different mythologies and stories about it, but I think it's the Great Awakening. I personally think the awakening takes place over many generations. And so, I think we're coming out of the first understanding of globalization, which really came through economics. So there's some, controversy about that. But what the, mass media and internet and everything really created was the way to be introduced to information from all over the world in a very short period of time. So if you're a seeker looking for information, you can find it now really quickly. And so that's a huge, like, like the flower of life, like Venn diagram overlap of, one field into another. And so that's causing an awakening. And part of that has been an idea both for people looking for optimization and people for looking healing mental health disorders that has turned to psychedelics. And so, psychedelics and visionary medicines in their own right are finally getting the interest that they deserve in the power that they hold. And so that, of course, brings up a lot of different questions and the complexity of, global society about how they're going to be used. And the simple answer is every single way you can imagine. And some of those ways will be institutionalized and regulated. And, some of them are really purposeful and some of them aren't. And people will focus either on the positives or the negatives, et cetera. You can just expect that. But I think all of that's part of this awakening. And the plants have a tool associated with that. I personally think that, if you go way back in history, like 50,000 years, 100,000 years, 500,000 years, you're going to see hominids and then humans having, incredible use of psychedelic plants just all the time. It's why we have all the receptors in the brain for them. It's also why you find them in all the traditional healing lineages from around the world. So this is not an accident that the traditional lineages hold these plants as sacred. There's new archaeological evidence coming out every year that's showing that these plants were being used. The plants were being, moved from North America to South America and vice versa, and through all the different trade routes. So visionary plants have been, really being used way before there was any kind of laws or legislation around it. And so I think there was a period of time that helped expand consciousness to a point that, certain mythologies, rules, regulations, laws, mass society took over, closed down all of that. And those same tools that have been used to expand consciousness are coming back in a very real way. And every time that happens, they're used a little bit differently because the culture shifts and changes. And so I think now we have to bring them in alignment with the values that our society holds so that they can be seen as something positive instead of something that's threatening, right? We need these things to be tools that people are using to awaken, and that people really use them on the positive side of them, not on the negative, because if they go on the negative, it amplifies the negative, and then that gets, obviously honed in on, and everyone then wants to get fear-based all about that. So when you really see these as teachers, you really see them as medicines, you really see them as optimizers, and you get, really good messaging out there about that, then they become part of that awakening that's happening. And I don't have a time limit on the awakening. I just know that we're in it and it's something to embrace. And if you feel that way and you're giving to it, you're part of the awakening, and you're part of that movement that's taking place. And I think that there's a lot of power in that in a positive way. There's a lot of light, there's a lot of healing, there's a lot of support, and there's a lot of growth and learning for everybody involved. So I think that's actually taking place, maybe slower than a lot of people would like, but I think it's definitely been prophesized, kind of continuously through history. And so I don't see any reason that it's not happening right now.
Yeah, that's one thing I talk about all the time. We're watching 26 different indigenous prophecies that I know about, and basically every spiritual text and book that's ever been written, if you look at the vibration, the message of those books and religions or practices, they all describe what we're seeing right now in the physical. That's reminds me of what I was when we was talking about the internet. I believe the internet is the physical visualization to give us a big hint of the spiritual world before it really emerged. The internet started to emerge before the awakening became mainstream. Around 2012, the awakening became mainstream for the collective. And I believe this was a precursor showing us, there is a way to communicate throughout the world. Instantaneously, we can connect to everybody, unlimited information. I joke all the time, man. I'm a Google genius. Like with Google, man, there is no question that goes unanswered. Like
Exactly.
you can ask me anything and give me 5 seconds to turn around, and I'll come back with the answer, like from Google. But one thing I heard about in you in a recent interview, I was listening to. I traveled 1,200 miles all the way up here to Wisconsin for this ceremony. I was like, well, got him coming up. I'm gonna listen to a few interviews. The mirror aspect is something that I talk about all the time. I talk about it in ceremony, after ceremony, how like when we realize, the oneness aspect of our reality, and the mirror aspect is a huge teacher, and you can see it. I had a spontaneous, this was without medicine or anything. I had a spontaneous moment of oneness, gave up form and everything, went into source. And the mirror aspect is what I use to make sense of this whole thing. And literally, I was talking to someone about their awakening, and we were driving down the road, and I was looking in the rearview mirror, and I was talking to them in the rearview mirror, watching the road, looking in the rearview mirror. All of a sudden, I looked at the rearview mirror, and it was me sitting in the back instead of them. And I had to pull over, and then, everything went haywire, and then I come back into form and forever changed. But can you talk about how you view the mirror aspect of, I think you said that the new age belief of the mirror aspect or whatever. Can you give your aspect of it or how you see it?
Yeah, fundamentally, I think, you start with the idea of I am consciousness. And so we all share that. We've individualized it, and we believe that it's somehow separate and, individualizing. But I think you flip that and you realize it's not separate, and it's something that we all share. And it takes us into the we are. And, so we have to change in our mindset the idea of being an individual organism to being part of a collective organism that we're all part of. So I like to think of it like one tree where we're all fruit on the tree, and we're all a different fruit, but it's still part of the same tree. And so in that, you have this very powerful state of beliefs that all represent separation. And it's all the ways you in your mind create that illusion of separation that fundamentally is not the core reality that we're in. And so there's this illusion of separation, and then there are these spiritual events where that illusion of separation is broken. These higher states of consciousness are raised where you see beyond that illusion of separation, and you see the cosmic mirror in its real form, which is that the outside is reflective of the inside is reflective of the outside. And, the I am consciousness is how you navigate that. And that, in the highest states of consciousness that we know of, all of form disappears. It's one state of consciousness that we're all sharing. And in that source is conscious, intelligent, and real. And we are part and parcel of that source. And so, I think the experience of rising into the I am consciousness is just a natural part of spiritual development and awakening. And, we try to individualize it, but I don't think that that's the ultimate state of it. And we, ultimately come to this we are consciousness. And then you can see that the person is you, it's not you. You are the same as everybody else, but also differentiated. And, it's a very just potent teacher in the mystical arts. Super potent teacher.
I love it. Yeah, it's it's something that it really hits hard in the Wachuma ceremonies. How I explain people the difference between ayahuasca and Wachuma. Ayahuasca kind of shows you there's a spirit world there, and it'll take you out of your body into the spirit world. And the Wachuma will more show you that the spirit world is right here. It'll produce miracles. I like the last time I had people on a hike. I was hiking people out in the mesas behind back in the Wild Horse Mesa in southern Colorado. There's rocks and desert and cactus and sagebrush. That's it, and wild horses. And we was walking along, and I sat down on the rock, and I was talking to these people. I was like, this is a miracle medicine. You can voice something, and there's a good chance you're going to find it, and that'll be your connection. That you have a connection to the spirit world here. And my left ear started ringing. I was like, I'm gonna go over and use the rest. I went over there and took a piss behind a rock, and I come back with an eagle skull that was sitting on top of a rock over there, and showed it to him. And man, they started crying. It hit so deep, of that magic that the Wachuma is. I love working with it, and I love working with it in the same conjunction, like a long retreat where we do ayahuasca one night, and then we're do a hike with Wachuma a couple of days later, and then they can integrate those two truths together. Do you guys do anything outside ayahuasca at Blue Morpho? Or, I know you have other, like tobacco ceremonies and things like that, but do you work with Wachuma there, or?
Yeah, we do. Yeah, we have a lineage and tradition associated with Wachuma. I agree with your assessment. The ayahuasca can be very astral, and it can be very out of body. And the Wachuma is very present, and it's very here. It's very connected to Pachamama and Mother Earth. It's very connected to, the natural spirits, nature spirits. And I've also noticed that if you're working on something in it, that you can get into like a time loop where it's like time keeps working on that thing for what would be like in linear time hours. But it's just, it keeps going and through it until it ultimately happens. I remember I was going through a healing myself in this stream, and a Blue Morpho butterfly would appear at one end of the stream, fly up the stream past me, and disappear around the corner. And it just kept looping in that butterfly flying past me over and over and over again until my body was healed. And it took maybe about 4 hours in the stream for that to happen. And I found it to be an incredible teacher, miracle producer, like you're saying. And so I shared that same sentiment. We have people that come for a week of ayahuasca, and then we do a week of San Pedro, and San Pedro / Wachuma, it's kind of same name. And yeah, I've found exactly the same experiences. For me, it's been one of the same, massive ceremony experience producers as much as ayahuasca. I don't think one is more powerful than the other, like just massive. Yeah. So, I have unbelievable respect for it as a teacher. In fact, right before this, I was talking with another friend about, having a week of ayahuasca and then Wachuma down in the Amazon. We also do Wachuma ceremonies outside of Cusco in the Sacred Valley, and, being surrounded by all the mountains and mountain spirits there. And we, also teach from the traditions of the Andean people and the Incan people.
That's beautiful. So I got a question. This is from Nikki Zephyr. If you can field this one right quick. She says, I have one question. So what do you think it means when a person does strong medicine and nothing happens? That's a great question, actually.
Yeah. First, if it's ayahuasca, sometimes you can have so much that it turns it off. So in the case of ayahuasca, a too large of a dose can actually create zero experience. That's just a physiological phenomena associated with the ayahuasca. So, people misinterpret more to mean that they're supposed to have more experience. It's not really like that. I think of it more like you need to have enough ayahuasca so that you can, like tuning a radio dial, you can actually get that dial to turn to another channel, and that it's a very specific channel. And for some person, that might be a very small amount of that ayahuasca. And for another person, it could be a lot more. I've noticed in ceremonies where I had, a fairly large dose and it kicked off really fast. And as a practitioner, I just actually planed past the entire ceremony. And so the ceremony was sitting there like nothing was happening and I was flying. And I had to actually like back up, go back to them, pick them up in consciousness and get them to go with me, because I had just literally rocket shipped up and out of the place. And they're like, hey, you left us behind, So, too much doesn't always mean that you're going to have that ceremony. There's also a situation that, depending on the week of healing, it can also be a cumulative thing. Like you don't always, if you're getting medicine for healing purposes, the medicine's choosing how much of an effect that has. And so you don't always want to be, in a really altered state when different kinds of healing are taking place. And so sometimes healing will take place and all the visions will go away because it'd just be literally too intense on the brain to go through that process. So it really isn't a psychedelic experience at that time. You can be completely lucid. You can feel completely sober. So, depending on what's happening, there can be either the physiological part of it, or it can be the actual medicine is taking you out of the vision so that you just receive and it processes and that's it. I've seen that happen where people have gone like 3-4 ceremonies with literally no visions, and they're just working on something. And then in the 4th or 5th ceremony, massive purging happens and this like huge release takes place, and then it all opens up. So you just have to be patient with it. A lot of people think that they're supposed to somehow just get visions. And I don't think that's how it works. I think you sometimes have visions, you sometimes don't have visions. You always have an experience. So it's about going deeper into the experience and just keep practicing with it. So, do another series of 3, 4, 5 ceremonies and see what happens. And ask it as well when you're in there. You can always ask the ayahuasca, like, hey, how do I turn the visions on? Now, there's some people who just don't have the visionary field in a way that they can relate to. So then there's auditory field, the physical sensory fields, there's the emotional fields. And so, I've worked with people who just don't ever have visual visions. And so we actually work with them to stimulate the imagination as we start to go into ceremony. So some techniques we use is to first do invocations at the beginning of ceremony on your own. When you're sitting, 15 minutes before the ceremony, just start invoking different kinds of helping or healing spirits. They can come from literally any mythology or tradition that you like. So they just want to be, helpful and healing. That's what's important. So, literally from any tradition. I've even had people who come down that because they grew up with superhero comics and stuff, to them, they're helping spirits, all superheroes. So I don't have a problem with that. Other people are connected to nature spirits and they are calling on jaguars and hummingbirds and eagles. And, then there are other people who are connected to, Hinduism, and they're calling on Hindu deities. Like if they're helpful and healing, that's all that matters. So work with that and they start to imagine them. Another good imagination technique is to just imagine over and over and over and over as fast as you can, different objects or things that you can like see in your mind's eye. So really simple, like apple, like when you can like picture an apple, or just like really think it like, yeah, okay, I got apple, banana, rose flower, sunflower, cloud, bird in the sky, hummingbird on the feeder, cactus flower, like just one and then another, and just awaken the imagination going into the ceremony as the medicine is starting. And I found that to be very powerful with all different kinds of visionary medicines, not just ayahuasca. So that really helps kind of activate the brain. Depending on what we've been doing before the ceremonies, a lot of times the mind is just in that really like analytical or intellectual state. Just even if you've just been having to drive in a car for a long time or whatever, you just might not be in that really active imaginary state, and you just want to help the brain get going. So all those things help.
Yeah, that's great advice, man. That's beautiful advice. Never heard that, but I see how that would make sense for sure. So what advice do you have for my retreaters that are coming? I got a lot of first timers that's never done the medicine. So what would be your short advice other than what you just gave?
Yeah, the shortest advice is release all expectations. You're here to have a communion with spirit, and your communion with spirit is not everyone else's stories. Don't compare your experience to anyone else's because it's meant only for you. Find your heart before the ceremony, or make that an intention to find in the ceremony, because your heart's super important. And enjoy yourself, because it's incredibly fun to do this, even though there might be some difficult times or things you have to face.
And as a maestro, as a brother, what advice do you have for me?
If you're leading, set the intention to fulfill everyone else's intention. Always stay in the heart the entire time. Get as clear as you can. And in the first 15 minutes of ceremony, purge everything you need to purge. Purge everything you have to purge before anyone else has to start purging.
Beautiful. That happens naturally anyway, but
exactly.
Well, man, what advice do you have for the collective that may be thinking, maybe on the fence of ayahuasca or doing a ceremony, whether it be in the States or going down to Peru? I know right now that there's a lot of church. Before we go into that, there's one. So there's one thing I want to ask what your viewpoint is on this. So here in the States, I know you're probably following it. There's a push for, naturalization of medicines in cities and things like that, which I think is great. I think it's really important. I think it's going to open up some other questions, obviously. But one of the things that really is a big conversation right now is leaving peyote out of the verbiage in most cities, actually, in respects to the NAC, in respects to Native American culture and all that. I see both sides of it. Me personally, I want to share mine, and then I want to get your thoughts. Me personally, I see both sides of it. I see why they don't want to include it, and the NAC is protecting it, and they don't want to include all this. The other side of me says this belongs to the earth, and it belongs to all its inhabitants. So what's your viewpoint on this? I think that we're moving forward, but I think we may be messing up on a few key points on this movement.
Well, I come from a place of acceptance and love, and understanding that I think it's an honor to get to practice in any of the kinds of medicines. And I know that it's a political hot topic, so I respect all sides and all voices. But personally, what I think needs to happen is that the cultures that have these plants in their history need to embrace the fact that other cultures are now interested in them. And, those cultures that are now interested in them are coming because the people who are in those cultures, are also struggling, and they're looking for solutions, and they're looking for new kinds of experiences that can help them. So I think that this is actually a massive opportunity for the cultures that have been suppressed to actually get a chance to really grow and be supported. But they need to make that part of their mandate. They have to make that important to, not just hold on to what happened in the past, but also see that the culture needs to grow into the future. And the tribal cultures are special, and they're really important. So I would like the tribal elders to think about how they can preserve their culture by embracing the increased interest in this movement, with an understanding that, maybe new cultures have to be formed outside of their culture to preserve what they're doing, but they could still support other groups to use the medicine in a respectful, tribal way. and that they could share some of what they're doing to, promote that. In terms of the legislation itself, I would just simply legislate it that it's illegal to go to any Native American peyote sites. If you're not one of them, that's theirs. Like, you can't go steal someone else's stuff. So it's as simple as that. You don't have to put it in the legislation that it's illegal to use these plants. You can put into the legislation it's illegal where you source them. And I would like to see the Native Americans, if they were interested in getting involved in sacred cultivation and sacred permaculture, to actually be able to create a supply chain for these kinds of medicines and support the people. Maybe not I don't know where the conflict is, but my generation was born into the conflict, right? So I wasn't part of the conflict. I didn't exist during the conflict. And I don't believe in the conflict, and I don't want to support the conflict. I want to support harmony and balance between everybody. And I love the Native American traditions, and I've supported where I can. And so I would like to see if we could find reciprocity in that, where the Native American identity can be protected. That's super important. Protect the identity of the tribe and have that have importance, that can be shared outside of that identification, and then find a way to create a sacred supply chain and protect the natural peyote fields for the Native Americans to whom that belongs. I think that's a middle ground we could work towards, and that could help also protect then the important movement in legislation, which is like, crisscrossing. There's a need in legislation to understand medicines as medicines and to grow in and improve upon the legislation, and decriminalizing these plants is part of that. And it's really important, especially when they've been found to have medicinal purposes, but at the same time, we must protect the Native American tribes and their traditions, and keep a sacred space and safe space for them. So I would try to work on that and see if we could control the supply chain in a better way, and you really support the Native Americans to protect, the source origin of their peyote, and have peyote be a medicine in a true medicinal context for the other people that could benefit from it.
Yeah, I saw very clearly that the way that peyote is going to move forward is through private collections, or large group collections, large greenhouses full of peyote, and I've been in these it's already happening. I've been in these greenhouses of massive private collections, So I see that's really the way going forward. The peyote fields down in South Texas and Mexico, they're depleted, and it takes 7 to 15 years for a button to reach maturity. They flower in between year 3 and 8, and that's when they reach maturity. But so it takes a long time. But I've had the opportunity to sit in several NAC meetings, and I've had very massive experiences. And at one time, I started purging, and I went forward and was purging by the fire, and it was my first time ever purging with peyote. And the roadman, he was singing Midnight Water Song. It's like it's sung at midnight, obviously. It's singing to the eagle. And as I was purging, I closed my eyes and I opened my eyes, and I was in a totally different space. I was out in the middle of this field, and I looked around. There was a bunch of old people, a bunch of old spirits around me. But they were physical, but I time traveled. Oh, yeah. I looked to my left, and the roadman was standing beside me singing a song. And after a second or two, I was back in the in the original ceremony space in this time frame. And I sat back, and I was like, man, holy shit, that's some crazy. And the roadman, he got up, he looked at me, and he walked outside and took a piss outside, and he come back in, and as he was walking by me, he leaned down next to me. He's like, that was some crazy shit, wasn't it? I was like, man, you were there? We both went back to the original time that song that he sung was very first sung hundreds of years ago. The very first time that song come into this realm, we were there, and that was like one of the most crazy peyote things that ever happened to me. Another one, Man, I got stories for days on that shit. But ayahuasca gave me a message, and it's a personal message, so I'll leave it at that. But I was like, prove it. If this is real, prove it, because it was something that was like just like too unbelievable, for me to even comprehend. And I was like, prove it. And she's like, okay, how do you want me to prove it? I was like, send me a condor feather. And from the Andes, I don't want a California condor. I want an Andean condor that flew over Machu Picchu. I want one from down there. And then I'll believe what you tell me. And like 2 or 3 weeks later, I was in a peyote meeting. The roadman called me up to the altar at the end of the night. He's like, I had this dream like a week ago. I got this condor feather like a couple of years ago. Someone brought it up to me, and they were trying to complete like the eagle condor prophecy and all that. And he handed me this huge ass condor feather and puts it in my hands, and it's just like the world starts shaking around me. It's just like the message was very, very beautiful for me. It was a huge confirmation of who I was and everything, that the message that was given to me. But yeah, those things, man, it's we have to, one thing that I've saw is very helpful in this journey, the awakening, is almost forget everything that you know and just start writing a different story, because 95% of what you know up at this point is a lie. It's part of it's not real. The reality is a totally different thing. So sorry for rambling. What's your message for humanity? I'm gonna let you go. Get back to your retreat. And before you share, I got to have you back on. We gotta talk some more when I have some more time, and get deeper into this thing.
Yeah, no, I'd love to. My message for humanity is simple. Like, let's do it together. Let's be the positive change. If we believe in the awakening, let's be part of it, and let's be conscious about it. And let's work through our differences and our difficulties from the past so that we can respect the past, but heal from it, and reawaken the tribal cultures that know of these medicines and the real uses of them. And let's do something really positive for humanity and each other. And let's develop new concepts of community. And so we can do it. It's how you just make friends, and it's how you just spend your time. And so it's not hard. And, we can support each other to be better people. And in doing so, we make the whole world a better place. And, we can learn to live in harmony once again with nature, and we can learn to live in harmony with each other. So let's do that if you're interested. And we can use these sacred ceremonies as a way to make that easier and get through different difficulties and hurdles. And I welcome anybody on that journey with me who wants to go.
Awesome. Hamilton Souther, everybody. Thank you for joining the Eagle's Nest podcast. Stick around. I might want to take you off and shut down the show, and I will talk to you for a few minutes if you have some time. Hamilton Souther, everybody. Go visit him down at Blue Morpho down in Peru. What's the email? What's the website?
Yeah, bluemorphotours.com. And so
bluemorphotours.com.
bluemorphotours.com, you can just Google it. And you can also find me on Facebook and Instagram at Hamilton Souther and Hamilton Souther Official.
Awesome. What's the name of that book again?
Medicine versus Sorcery.
Medicine versus Sorcery. Hamilton Southern, everybody. Thank you for joining us, brother. And stick around for just a few moments.
Will do. Thanks so much, guys.
All right, everybody. Yeah, that was Hamilton Southern. Man, what an honor to have that guy on. Just a wealth of information. Such a humble guy for the amount of information that he that holds and understands. Such a humble guy. Thank you, everybody, for joining another special edition of the Eagle's Nest podcast. Again, we're filming live from up here at Cosmic Tree of Life up in Wisconsin. Check them out, cosmictreeoflife.org. There's another ceremony coming up in October. Me and Ella will be leading. And it's definitely too late for this one. It starts tomorrow. So yeah, we'll be in ceremony tomorrow night and Sunday night, the following night. So please send me and our group well wishes and everything. Hope everyone has a great ceremony. For those of you listening that are on their way here to the ceremony, looking forward to seeing you. If you're listening on Facebook, go over and like Eagle's Nest podcast over on YouTube. give us a subscribe if you really like the content. And yeah, looking forward to having Hamilton back on very soon. Let me see what else I got for you guys. I got Nikki Zephyr. She's coming up as a guest soon. She's actually in the chat room right now, so I'm looking forward to having you on, Nikki. She is the daughter of Chief Golden Light Eagle. She is also heading up the Star Knowledge Conference in Wagner, South Dakota on November 11th. So 11/11 is the Star Knowledge Conference. It's going to be 3 days. You can check out links on my Facebook page. And yeah, but we're going to have her on soon. We're going to be sharing what it was like growing up, being a daughter of such an influential person, and we're going to be honoring her late father in this upcoming conference, Chief Golden Light Eagle. So yeah, shout out to him from the other side. Appreciate all you're doing and all you have done. And yeah, looking forward to having her on soon. Oh, what was that date? Let me see here. Bear with me for just 1 second. I think so. Tuesday, September 13th, I'm gonna do a late night show on the Jess Rogie show. So shout out to Jess when you hear this. Looking forward to being back on your show. This is probably the second or third time I appeared on her show. Looking forward to that. It's going to be starting at 11 p.m. Pacific time. So look out for links, and I'll be sharing those on the page as well. So, but yeah, I'm going to get back to preparing for the weekend and preparing the space and everything. And shout out to everybody. And I hope you enjoyed the conversation with Hamilton, and we will have him on very soon again. So peace out, namaste, and yeah, and just take some advice from Hamilton. And this is everything that you see around you is you. So just understand that if you're going through some strife, it's probably internal. So that's usually a sign for you to look inside. Appreciate everybody, and see you next time.